Okay.
Hello, and welcome to another show from You Call This Yoga, where we're sharing an internet TV discussion with special guests from around the country and eventually the world, discussing their channels of accessible yoga. We hope that our sharing of these topics can invite you to explore yoga practice in new modalities or more deeply in the ones you already are practicing. These are shows for all skill levels, teachers, students, and even the curious who have not participated much yet. We do have interaction, and we invite people to call in at 919-518-9773. You can Skype in at Computers 2K Now, or you can join the chat in the box on the Nissan Communications channel. We're fortunate to have a sponsor from Niamon, who, when you visit Niamon.com and click on Explore, you can see their other Niamon minutes as well as the one we'll share today. Our special guest today, Maria Alfaro, who lives in California, arose early today to experience our little challenges with flooding, which they've had in California recently too. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Howie.
Thanks for rising and shining with us.
My pleasure.
Maria has a history of practicing yoga in several modalities. Today we're talking about neurogenic yoga and TRE, her specialty. Maria, can you share some of your origins into the practice of yoga as far back as whatever is comfortable?
Of course. Well, it's a long history, so I will make it brief. I started in '86 in India. I was exposed to Ashtanga yoga, not with Patabi Joyce, but I studied with an American teacher for a few years in my trips to India. And from there, in about '95, I decided when I moved here to the States to become a yoga teacher. So I did an Iyengar training with Rodney E. for a couple of years. And then later on, I also studied with Anna Forrest. I did one of her certification training. I also study, of course, with all the teachers, but those are the trainings I did. So I've been teaching since '96.
Mm-hmm. And how did your community appear at that time? Who were you teaching to?
Well, here I was living here in California. At that time I was living in San Francisco, so I was teaching in a few yoga schools there. And then in '97, I moved to Santa Cruz, where I live now, which is a little town south of San Francisco. And so I've been teaching here and all over Silicon Valley. There are many schools and many, I also work for many companies, that were offering yogas to their employees.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the last few years, my yoga classes have faded away because I'm more busy teaching trainings and workshops. So that's the way I'm teaching at this point. And of course, I work with private clients.
Mm-hmm. And how has your history of private clients evolved over the last several years?
Well, mostly I never really pursued it. It's more like even now when I have a private client, it's somebody that find me online or through my website. So basically, I don't send private clients away, but I don't really look for them because I'm kind of busy. But in the past, they were produced by my classes. So people were coming to class and they wanted to go deeper, or maybe they had some physical challenge or mental challenge, or or simply they were feeling insecure in a class, and they needed a little support. So that was the majority of my private clients in the past. And now I work mostly with people who are in the training program. So I still see people individually, but it's more because they are working towards their certification.
Mm-hmm. So viewers and listeners, let's pause for a little bit to gain a little more understanding of the certifications that Maria is talking about. I've started to bring up this concept of neurogenic yoga. It was definitely a new concept for me to hear about and to observe. Yet, because of my body traumas, I have a very agitated nervous system. May not seem that way on camera, but I do have lots of little elements in my body trying to work out stress and trauma over the years. With that, when I saw the videos and read about the development of this concept and how it connects with yoga, and that it has some broad reaching users of this practice with certified benefits, it's compelling to share it with you. So I'll invite viewers to write down or type in neurogenic, Neurogenic, yoga, and you can go to .com to learn more there, but we'll go to websites soon. Meanwhile, if you want to call in and have a little breakfast with Maria, it's 919-518-9773. And also, she is with Skype at Computers 2K Now.
Voice.
Maria, tell us, what kind of teachers have you come across who are interested in this training? We'll just talk about the training and get more to the details in just a little bit. What do you find for teachers that is compelling?
Well, neurogenic yoga is fairly new, so we only did a couple of teacher trainings, one year and one in Norway, which was for European teachers. And the interesting thing is that all kinds of teachers were interested in, because really the beauty of this work is that you don't have to be into a specific kind of yoga. Of course, the purpose of this yoga anyway is a healing, and so it goes into that direction, but really it could be married to a very vigorous yoga if that is what people. So we have trained, let's say, vinyasa teachers, and we've trained teachers that were mostly yoga therapy teachers, restorative yoga teachers. So the kind of yoga that people do doesn't really matter. Any yoga can match this type. So neurogenic yoga is not a new style, it's a new method that allows you to combine any yoga that you like to practice together with this natural body response that we call self-induced therapeutic tremors.
Great. Could you say that one more time? Because after you do, we're going to share a little bit of what might happen in nature and how this may originate. What will we call that again?
We call it self-induced therapeutic tremors.
Okay, self-induced therapeutic tremors. All right, well, viewers and listeners, let's get ready for a little video that was taken in nature and used to demonstrate how this body response may occur.
Holy snapper.
If you watch that animal after he finishes convulsing, you'll see, because he's aware of the fact that we're all around him, and it's a very stressful experience for an animal like a polar bear. Even after he settles down, and then he'll start doing a couple of deep breaths, and then he'll breathe really nicely, and it'll really... Now look, here he goes. See how he's breathing there now? You can see, so that even though it looks a little unpleasant to look at him convulsing like that, in fact, it lets off all that stress, and he then is able to relax and sleep the thing off.
Well, viewers, how did that seem for you? Yoga practitioners, how did that deep belly diaphragmatic breathing appear? Let's ask Maria a little bit of the history of this video and where it's come from and some of its context.
Okay, so this video doesn't come from TRE, those people, or Neurogenic Yoga. But this video has been on the internet for a long time, and actually we use it at all of our training. So what that video is about is showing a very wild animal, obviously, because the polar bear is one of the wildest animals on Earth, having this natural tremoring response. Now, in his case, it's not self-induced, it's really natural. It's happening because he was shot down by an helicopter. And so obviously that's a stressful experience. And like animals do, he's shaking it out right in the spot. In the case of humans, we have to self-induce it because although this tremor mechanism is in our body, we tend to start repressing it at the early age because it has a kind of a negative social connotation. If you think people who tremors are either sick or tired or weak or afraid or simply weird. And so we don't want to look like that. And so when we figure it out, we sort of numb it. But when people are in an accident or in a very stressful situation, this might come up spontaneously. Problem is that then people around you and yourself will try to stop it. So the difference is this animal goes through it naturally because it is a natural response. So we use it to demonstrate that. We show this video in trainings because people can see, obviously the polar bear has not been trained to do that to please us, okay? So we can demonstrate by showing that video that it's true, that it's a natural response.
Well, we've had David Emerson on the show recently, and he studied with Bessel van der Kolk, and who produced this book, The Body Keeps the Score. They've shown how this can be measured with brain scans, and that's the nervous center of our body in one form, but also all the chakras and fascia and elements of the nervous system throughout the body that can also keep trauma within its cellular element. So there's many a possibility that we're not even dwelling on in our day-to-day life. Yet something that comes to mind for me is the concept or term, shake it off. I mean,
which is the title of David's new book. Dr. Berceli's new book is called Shake It Off Naturally.
Ah, all right. Well, now that you've said his name, let's share with the viewers some of your history with this groundbreaking practitioner.
Cool. So, Neurogenic Yoga is a sister method, is a new modality that Jenica Mills and I, the yoga teacher, created on request of the founder of TRE. So in order to understand how Neurogenic Yoga works, we have to refer to the mother technique, which has been around for probably 3 decades, spanning from Sudan. Although David is American, he started teaching it in Sudan. Now we are in 43 countries. So basically, David is a therapist, bioenergetic therapist, is a clinical social worker, and also has degrees in theology and Arabic. And this is because he graduated, sponsored by the Catholic Church to become a therapist back in the 70s. And then they sent him out in war zones to be a trauma counselor for people traumatized by war. So what he could do with his, what he knew was not enough. And he was also traumatized himself. And so he set on a search to find ways to help larger group of people instead of just one-on-one. But what brought this, what led him to discover how to work with the body in this particular manner is because he observed that people under stress tend to contract. So if there is an explosion, let's say, people will contract. Nobody will go like that, right? So he observed that with people from different nationality, realizing this is not a learned response, it's a natural way that the body protects itself. And also he observed the little kids below the age of 4 tend to shake in these situations. And so putting the two things together, he developed this theory then. Now, a few million people later and some research later, it seems to be proved as true, which is if we have a mechanism that makes us contract, which is involuntary to protect ourselves, meaning we cannot not do it, we should also have a mechanism that makes us release the contraction. And that is the tremor mechanism, like that polar bear. But we don't do it because we don't want to look weak. We don't want to look uncool. And so we tend to repress it. But if people, like viewers, can probably remember at least one incident in their own life where maybe they were, witnessing an accident or in an exam that they couldn't be prepared, or maybe the police pulled them over from speeding or something or other in which they felt this jittery feeling in their body. And of course, they stop it. So that's what it is. We just let it express itself instead of stopping it in a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
So David did this, basically discovered this concept, and then he started working with it. And since then, he thought about a couple of million people all over the world in natural disaster zones, in war zones. And then in the last decade, it has been developed as we are now a nonprofit organization, and we have training programs in 43 countries. And I myself have been teaching both modalities in various American states, in Canada, in Holland and Belgium, in Israel and Palestine, in Indonesia. So I've been going to many different places because I'm very passionate about this work, and there is nothing more fun than, like David says, to see an organism shaking itself back to health.
Mm-hmm. Would you spell out David's last name so that our viewers and listeners can note it?
You read it Berceli, but it's really spelled Berceli. So it's spelled Berceli, but being that we are American, we say Berceli.
Okay.
That's what he calls himself.
Well, as long as we know that we're just using one L,
Yes.
And the technique that he has refined is titled?
It's called TRE, which stands for Tension and Trauma Releasing Exercises.
Yes. So viewers and listeners, even though it's a 3-letter acronym, the title has more than 3 words in it. So that could be confusing. Trauma and tension releasing exercises. Correct? Good. So that's why if you look it up, it may be 2 different ways to discern that. Capital T, capital R, capital E.
If you put that online, you will find there is a lot of stuff about it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, we're curious about some of this mode and then your application of it. So how did you do your spin-off from his original work? What led you down this interesting path?
Okay, so I've been working with David as a TRE person parallel to my yoga career since 2004. On 2011, I became a certification trainer for TRE, meaning I traveled the world training people, mostly therapists, but not only therapists. So David, knowing my background in yoga, asked me if I was interested to create a sister modality that was more directed to yogis, to interest the people who love yoga to join our ranks. And so basically the main difference between the two modalities is that in TRE, David has designed a simple routine of exercises, which are one or two might be inspired by yoga, but there's a variety of different exercises to fatigue and stretch the legs, and then lying in certain position and knowing what is about, that's very important. So to create the safety, this natural body response is coming on, and then we help the client or the group to regulate it and feel comfortable. So that's theory. The main difference with neurogenic yoga, in neurogenic yoga, we use yoga positions and breathing exercises to achieve the same results. So basically, instead of doing those 7 exercises, which are always the same, to create this response, we use yogasana and pranayama. And that's why it can be adapted, meaning somebody that likes to practice vinyasa can do a vinyasa practice and then lie down and shake. And if somebody that likes to practice, more gentle yoga can do that and then shake. So basically, it's not about a certain position or a particular asana. It's more about this a concept on how to integrate a mild activity in the body. Basically, you want to jump start it again in the body because it is a natural mechanism. So it's very important that A, the person feels safe, and B, they understand what it's about, because otherwise the first reaction would be what they did all over their life to stop it, because it's not okay.
Yes, understanding is essential. And I could appreciate our viewers and listeners have been wondering, well, can I get a little more human element to this? And I say yes. I think it's time to show our second pearl, where Maria and Jenica will be demonstrating some of this basic process. Ready, Amnon, for pearl two.
The feeling of tremoring is different between different people and also between different days, because I myself experience it in many different ways. Sometimes it's like a more vigorous shaking, and sometimes it's more like a refined tremor that is deeper in the body and is almost like a purring or a little engine deep inside the core. Sometimes it's swaying, sometimes it's shaking, sometimes it's rolling.
It has not only deepened my own yoga practice, but it has really deepened my understanding of my own body and helped me to release a significant amount of old trauma patterns that I held and wasn't even actually aware of.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, welcome back. I hope that gives you a sense of what some of this program could be, and we'll ask Maria to explain a little bit more about what she and Jenica were exploring.
So since David asked us to create Neurogenic Yoga, this was 4 years ago, we have been getting to, Jenica lives in San Diego, so we have been getting together several times and experiment with different things. And then we have been leading, probably 100 workshops, maybe more between me and her, and getting the feedback of the people about how this works for them. So what we realize is that there are, well, you probably will not be surprised, but this seems to work, this new spin seems to work even better than TRE. Because if you think about it, the exercises that David used are very effective and practically awesome, but they're not very fun in themselves, and they're not designed in themselves to create, let's say, a more relaxed state in our nervous system. While yoga, as you know, has a history of thousands of years to do just that. So there is a science behind yoga, and that has been scientifically proved as well. So it seems to make sense, the fact that if we prepare the body with yoga, we are already walking in the direction of relaxation and groundness through the preparation to the tremors. While if we do those exercises, they are just, a tool that we use to create the tremors, but they don't have a very specific value on themselves. I would say that that's the main difference. However, not everybody, yoga is for everybody in a way, but not if you don't like yoga, right? So if you don't like yoga and you want to practice neurogenic yoga, that will create stress, because obviously you have to do something that you don't like to do, or that you have preconceived ideas about. So neurogenic yoga could be potentially for everybody, but only if they are open to practice yoga. While TRE is for everybody. I've been teaching it to people in wheelchairs, okay? So it is for everybody, and regardless of their age and mental setting, the only thing that they have to believe in is the capacity of the body to heal itself. There is no any belief system. Some people have even problem practicing yoga because of religious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and when you were saying that it was safe and that they understood, that was my question too, that they understood what was happening or going to happen. And that's a big thing, is we don't see it. We don't really know much about it intellectually, about traumas and such, and the mechanisms, and because there is this tendency to shut things down and to block things off, or that there's dogma about anything, or family stigmas and other pressures. And understanding is a big pathway for people to make some progress on. And even if you think you know a lot, there's so much more you don't know.
that's so true. And the thing is also, people have a resistance to, most people will have a resistance to admit or recognize that they've been traumatized. So one important thing is to realize the stress and trauma are in a continuum that go from the mild stress of being late at work to the severe trauma of being, let's say, in a war or an earthquake or anything in between. So it's the degree, okay? So even if somebody's lucky that nothing really major has ever happened to them, they will still be traumatized from the news, from 9/11, from the stories that they hear from their friends, from the stories that they might hear from their clients if they are in the helping industry. They might be traumatized by events that happen in the country. So we don't just get traumatized or stressed by our own personal history or the small circle that we live in, but we, as social beings, we are traumatized by everything else too. So the news, the elections, everything is piling in the body, and the body doesn't really know the difference from what happened to me and what I watched in TV. The bottom line with this work is that everything transmuted into tension. So every kind of stressor, small or big, from the slamming of the door to the shooting in the neighborhood or beyond, transmute into tension in the body, and that tension creates variety. I mean, doctor says the stress is the #1 killer, right? So the tension can be physical or emotional. Even sitting on a chair all day long for your work, you might love your work, but if you sit on a chair all day long, that's stressful for the body. So it's really important to understand that. It doesn't have to be a big event. It can be a variety of smaller ones, and everything is pile up tension inside our body. And that tension needs to be released at some point or creates problems.
Agreed. I personally have suppressed a lot of stress and tension over decades of my life. I've had physical accidents where I've been temporarily paralyzed and really just brushed it off as a flesh wound. I couldn't really shake it off because I was temporarily paralyzed, but mentally I was screaming it off and didn't really explore it much as to what was the emotional impact of that. But then I saw someone get knocked down in a hockey game recently, and I was physically ill after that. And I can appreciate that, though that happens. But to me, it became such a personal flashback of being knocked down and just being able to move or unable to move, and stuff that I never processed because I was just trying to get back into the game. Though I didn't get into the game anymore, I did try to just go home and act like it didn't happen. So I can appreciate it's scary stuff, though, and this ego or denial that, oh, that was really a problem is so innate.
So the beauty of this work is that you don't have to revisit the story.
Right.
It's not about the story, okay? The story is the last thing that happened in the brain. It's now the brain tried to figure it out, you know, what happened, okay? But the way that this work is really working with the tension in the body. So it's working at the neurophysiological level. And most of the times we don't know what we are shaking off. Sometimes we do. Sometimes a memory will come up or a picture or a smell or something or other, but otherwise it's just a neurophysiological release. And that's why this work is becoming very helpful and more recognized working with from therapists. You know, if people go to therapy and keep repeating the same story again and again for years and they don't make any progress, it's because it's locked in their body. So somatic modalities are becoming more popular in the therapeutic world because they see that they need to help the body to get rid of it. Because otherwise, if I tell you a story from this energetical place, what good is that gonna do? You know, it's gonna make it worse. So if I go like, so for example, David works a lot with veterans. I do too in some extent, but he does more. And when they walk into his office, they go like, I don't want to talk about it. David goes like, well, it's great because I don't want to hear about it. And then they do the practice and afterwards they go, and you know, the worst thing that happened to me was, and he goes like, I thought they didn't want to talk about it, but now they can because they release some tension in the body and it can come up as a healing. The story then can be healing. It can bring completion and integration to the process. While if you start with the story, you know, you're beating the trauma inside the body.
Mm-hmm. Right, same story, different day.
Huh?
Same story, different day.
Yes.
Well, and you also mentioned about the concept of yoga not being comfortable. And from arthritis and limitations, yoga wasn't very comfortable for me. And I just practiced laying around, breathing, legs up, looking like I was doing some neurogenic process, because when my body could unwind or relax, even though it wasn't self-induced, that when my body could tremble, that I felt that my fascia was releasing or something was letting go because I wasn't inducing it. It was coming more naturally, like the wilder animal that had something severe, that there wasn't a guide there other than years or hours of practice of laying around, looked like I was doing nothing yoga.
Well, yeah, well, this is a natural response again. So once you understand it, and a lot of people, when they practice it in this, you know, safe setting for a few times, then it comes up much more naturally, meaning it can come up when you are just relaxing, or if you are stressed, or if you are tired, or a combination of those things. It can just come up naturally, because once you understand, you see, the body doesn't have a problem at all with doing this. It's the mind, because the mind is used to be in control. When you are awake, we are doing things coming from our cortex. This response is actually coming from the primitive part of the brain, which, by the way, Bessel van der Kolk, he says that there's trauma imprint in the brainstem and that we should find modalities to address that. So that's what we're doing, because we induce something that actually comes from the brainstem. But so when that happens, the mind goes, wait a moment, who is doing this? I'm not doing this. It must be bad. It's bad, it's weird, it's bizarre, it's creepy. These are just some of the things that people say the first time. They go like, this is really weird. And then I ask them, well, but where does that come from? Is it coming from your mind, or is it coming from your body? And they go like, no, it's my mind. And I go like, yeah, because your body likes it. Otherwise, it will not be this easy to make it happen.
Interesting. Well, we're going to take a pause on that, viewers and listeners. Remember, you can call in 919-518-9773, Skype in Computers 2K Now. But also, in the concept of pairing good things together, let's take a break for our Niamon Minute and learn about some of their experiences out in the world and what makes other people feel good.
They're incredible, and it's a lot of plant-based food, which is great for vegans.
I really, really love the vegetarian lasagna.
I love great Middle Eastern food, the hummus. And when I come to Raleigh, I eat a Niamon.
Well, I happen to be a vegan, and I can get things there that are healthy and dairy and animal free.
Oh, everything is so fresh. The bread is delicious.
And I fell in love with the hummus a long time ago. It was whipped, so good, so light, so fluffy. And then the lentils, you can put it on top of the kale salad, and boom, you're good.
The food is fabulous. Niamon is always the head answer as to what was your favorite item at Yoga Fest.
Then it must be true. You know, those random interviews. I wasn't quoted at my favorite when it came up was chocolate baklava, because I was craving some sweets at the moment. But it's also Mujadara, and we still have some in the fridge here. So it's part of our staples. And do you like any Mediterranean food, Maria?
Well, I'm Italian,
so yes,
I spend a lot of time in the Middle East, so yes, I like Mediterranean food from all around the Mediterranean. Yes.
What's your favorite dish?
Well, you will be surprised. Is hummus and tabbouleh. Actually, those are my two favorite things.
Well, though you won't be in Raleigh, but at Yogaville, where you'll be in a couple of months teaching about neurogenic yoga, you might have some excellent hummus and tabbouleh from the East.
Yes, they have fabulous food. This will be my third year there. I love their food. It's very healthy.
And tell us about your program at Yogaville as just a little aside.
That's my favorite thing, Howie, because it's a very conducive environment, beautiful nature, super nice people, sweet, practices that they teach. The food is excellent, and it's a very nice format because it's 2.5 days. So basically there is a lot of time. The first evening we talk about it. On Friday I explain everything about the two practices. On Saturday is when we do 2 practices, and with neurogenic yoga it's perfect because people really get it. In the morning we do a more vigorous and yet gentle practice, like traditionally is done if you do a day long. So the morning is more active, and the afternoon practice is more restorative. And then the third day, we usually wrap it up by teaching TRE because people get curious about the mother technique. So instead of doing yoga last year, I put it to the votes, actually. If people prefer to do another yoga class, we do that. And then again, we will do a more, active class. But otherwise, we do a TRE class so that people can really see the difference. See, okay, this is TRE, this is neurogenic yoga, and that's how they are very similar. Because basically, once you lie down on the ground and shake, the 2 practices are identical.
But it's sort of the development of how you get there.
Yes. Yeah, so basically with TREs, those exercises designed by David, which are always the same. So it would be similar to, let's say, Bikram or Ashtanga. You always do those poses, but they're not yoga. So do those exercises to fatigue and stretch the muscle and then lie down and shake. That's TRE. Do some yoga and breathing exercises of your liking and then lie down and shake, and that's neurogenic yoga. So when people learn it in that format, they really see, I like the day-long format, or when I have the chance of teaching it more than once to the same people, because I will teach different things. And so they get it. Oh, okay, it's not about doing triangle pose followed by warrior pose. It's about doing something with my body that allows my body to prepare itself to, because basically these practices are just to jumpstart this natural mechanism in the body again. It's there, it's been there all the time. It's just that we have been sort of numbing it because, as I was saying initially, it doesn't look good. So in the society, you don't look strong or healthy if you shake. It's just a preconceived idea about the activity of shaking and tremoring.
And how would you adapt this to a wheelchair or a bedridden individual?
Well, if people have injuries or they are not mobile, it means their muscles are not very strong. I haven't been working with somebody who's completely paralyzed in the legs. I work with people who have problems with their legs and they cannot walk, and that's why but I'm sure it can also be used with people who are paralyzed. So basically what you want to do is find ways to activate the muscles, and the less they work out in general, the easier it is to make it happen, because if somebody is bedridden, it means the muscle tone is not very strong. And so just a little bit of often just squeezing, let's say, a block or one of those exercise ball between their legs for a while, for example, just as an example, it will create some activation in the legs. And again, it's important that they understand where we're going so that then they can let it happen. But basically the concept is, if they don't have a lot of strength, work with the muscles they can use and create a little fatigue there in any way that we can do it. So if they are in bed, for example, they could squeeze a ball between their legs. They could also squeeze a block between their hands, stuff like that.
Well, that's pretty fascinating. One of my several physical therapies was a fatigue-inducing modality, and the focus was actually on the less compromised side because it was a compensating side, and that it was to fatigue that and then go to the symptomatic side. But the point was also that there was an intention to fatigue to then let the body potentially reset or release in that way. So that's pretty interesting in that foundation. So I think the viewers would be even more fascinated by seeing this next pearl of wisdom, where one of our Defense Department veterans will share their experience with TRE.
Oh,
Thank
good.
You, yes.
Hi, my name is Arthur Lyon. I am a combat veteran infantry reconnaissance guy, have about 9 years in the military. So here's my video on how I started shaking on my first TRE workshop, and hopefully this can help you guys. Here I am shaking in my diaphragm. This is the kind of stress I've been holding on to, kind of guarding it and not really releasing it. It's just there. Shaking, moving into my chest. This is where I've had a lot of pain in my upper thoracic, my upper back. I attribute this to a lot of the carrying of body armor, rucksacks, jumping out of airplanes, long runs, that fun military stuff. My left arm started shaking, and it took me quite a while to figure out what this was, but I realized every time I would think about an event from overseas, my left arm would always kind of bend up in a reaction to those memories. Tied this to kind of the raising of a rifle of the same event for a protection or a offensive posture. And many sessions later, started getting my right arm started kind of like bending up and wanting to go into that same upward movement to get my rifle up. This shaking session was triggered by a memory of a firefight in Baghdad where my unit was pinned down and the citizens around the city were kind of turning on us. And even thought that this wasn't really that big of a deal or wasn't very traumatizing. The shaking really helped me figure out that I really was in actual danger. It was a serious deal, and we, as my whole unit, we're lucky to be here today.
Viewers, listeners, what are your thoughts on that? Viewers and listeners, we'd love to hear from you at 919-518-9773 or Computers 2K Now, or you can type in the chat box and log in. We have just a little while longer with Maria, who will give some thoughts about the video that we just shared.
So I haven't seen the video. I know this guy, though. I recognize his voice. I saw other videos with him in it. It's been Harold for us. And so there are so many people like him who actually became provider of this work. So the military are doing some research in Arizona about TRE. That's where David Berceli is based. He's based in Phoenix. So with his help, they're doing some research. It's a kind of sensitive subject anyway, because there is not a lot of talk of trauma in the army for obvious reason. They tend to more focus on the stress and the physical impact, but there is not a lot of talk on emotional trauma. However, of course, the military, soldiers are not the only people who have PTSD, and PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And there is a lot of talk in the therapeutical world to change the name to something less loaded, like post-traumatic stress injury, for example. So the symptoms, the most common are, difficulty sleeping, irritability, panic attacks, anxiety, nightmare, flashback, problems with the gastrointestinal system or with any part of your body, really. So the symptoms, according to the traumatologists in the world, are not symptoms of an unhealthy person. Actually, they're showing that the body is very healthy. It goes like, hey, I went through all this stuff, and you have to help me release it at the neurophysiological level. If you just talk about it, it's not going to help. Until you do that, I will manifest those symptoms. Mm-hmm. But it's actually, there is nothing wrong with that person. Again, soldiers are not the only people who have PTSD, but just likely to have it if, like this guy, had been 10 years in a war zone. So the symptom, it's like if you take a spring, let's say a metal spring, and you keep winding it, eventually it will jump in your face. That doesn't mean the spring is broken. Actually, it's working very well. That's its job. So what we do, we need to unwind it. And that's exactly what modality like TRE and neurogenic yoga are helping the nervous system to release. Because, there is a lot of stuff going on. It's not just the it's physiological, neurological. We have produce adrenaline, we produce cortisol. So there is a lot going on in the body that needs to basically reset itself. But through something like this, without having to dig into the story, we can help the body do that. And then the story can come up or not as a way to integrate.
Viewers and listeners, Maria's website is trecalifornia.com, where she has a wellspring of information and also her training programs. There are other videos on the neurogenics.com realm, and you could visit that too.
Neurogenicyoga.com.
Neurogenicyoga.com. Thank you for listening. The reason I say that is this isn't the only video out there, but we're trying not to show all the traumas that exist out there. But what Maria is saying is true. It's not just for veterans. There's many a trauma that we're going through, whether it's war, violence, person to person, or in my case, self or sports induced. We
also
have
the stress of everyday life, that doesn't have to be a strong trauma. While you talk about website, probably will be useful for the viewers also to make a note of Dr. Berselli website, where hundreds of videos are recorded from all over the world, of testimonials from professional, lay people, soldiers, housewives, anybody. There are hundreds of them. And the website of David is traumaprevention.com. That's also where people can find providers for TRE. So there will be providers near you, probably, people that they can find and work with them privately or go to their workshops. So there is a lot of resources on that website.
Viewers or listeners, anyone can Google for us if there's any TRE providers in the North Carolina, Virginia area, South Carolina. We have lots of active duty and other issues going on. We just even had flooding last year, and it looks like we have flooding again this year. Just having the challenges of getting to the TV station today could be invoking issues for people around town, as many an artery in Raleigh has been closed down. And we're very appreciative of Amnon patching us together with Google Hangout. Thanks,
Amnon.
There are
a provider in North Carolina, by the way. I know because I trained some.
Great. Well, we hope that they can make themselves known. If people know of TRE trainers, and they can reach out to me at howie@youcallthisyoga.org, Howie, Howie, at youcallthisyoga.org, where we can be a resource for people inquiring about this groundbreaking and shaking experience. Maria, what other thoughts would you like to share that we haven't touched upon for the show?
Well, I think we touched pretty much on everything. I really would love to encourage people to give this a try. So although we don't have a lot of education, actually we don't have any educational material at this time for neurogenic yoga, they can find a workshop near them, or because again the two practices are very similar, they can start with TRE, and on the website of Dr. Berselli, again traumaprevention.com, there is a store part which carries a lot of DVD, books, pamphlets. So basically with a small investment, all of his material include the TRE exercise. So basically there is an explanation of what it is, and there are photos, or if it's a video, a guided class where people can reproduce this response. So since neurogenic yoga is not available in DVD yet, but it soon will be, in the meantime, they could try it with TRE, because it's very similar, and that is something that people can do in the privacy of their home just by buying a DVD or a book.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned about pranayama. Do you have any preferred resources for newbies or the curious, or even teachers to expand pranayama practice?
Not really, the way that the difference between TRE and neurogenic yoga around that is in TRE, we mostly breathe naturally. We don't do anything at all to the breath. And once in a while, we take a deep exhale, like, which is, parasympathetically inducing. But in neurogenic yoga, we just play, we didn't invent any new way of using the breath. We just match it to some of the stuff that we do, So let's say if we do something vigorous, sometimes we might do the sipping breath, like that one, or we can do jive, but it's like the same with the poses, it's not that there is a specific recipe that will work better than other, because it depends from the time of the day, the personality, the body type, and the mood of the moment, so depending on what people like to do in that moment, everything will work.
Okay. Well, the good news for viewers and listeners is that there's not a prescribed and grossly sophisticated pranayama practice, one that you can practice your own breathing, hopefully a soothing, calming technique, because we already got an inherently masked and covered up, agitated nervous system. And I can testify for that because I can shake very readily with very little activation when I'm resting. It is kind of strange, especially if you're married to me, that is what is going on with this person. But my wife's a therapist too, and so she ingests her own secondary trauma issues from the world. So she has her own restorative practice and ways that she shakes her tensions out. So it's an individual process. And folks, if you have any questions or concerns, Maria, how is the best way for folks to reach you?
Well, the best way to reach me, since I travel a lot, is my email, which is maria@trecalifornia.com.
Easy enough. Wonderful. Well, viewers and listeners, I'd like to thank Niamon.com and have you go to their Explore drop-down to see their Niamon minutes from today as well as prior. We also would like to let you know that we have a partner in Western North Carolina called Light a Path. It's a nonprofit organization that has teachers bringing service to the underserved in their community. It's a beautiful concept where each teacher is the quasi-specialist in that realm. We're fortunate next week to have two of their board members, Sierra Hollister, one of the founders, and Lisa Sherman, one of the supportive board members, as well as possible other teachers who will be able to join us online and share how they are bringing yoga to the people in need who may not readily access it. It's thrilling to have another nonprofit in North Carolina. Chris Moon, one of their members, was at Yoga Fest this year, and we look forward to learning more of their pearls of wisdom. So that's next week at 10 o'clock, as long as the creek doesn't rise too high, or whatever the rest of the saying goes.
Hush your
So we're
mouth.
going to be thankful for Maria and for also Amnon in sharing our show today. Thank you, Maria. We look forward to sharing TRECalifornia.com with our viewers soon.
Thank you, Howie. I was very happy to be here.
Namaste, everybody.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety, or or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on NissanCommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.